a little bit of user experience that you might not think of if you haven't done this a bunch of times. Let's just keep adding things. Blah, 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 blah. Transdorfers. Enter. I don't see it. I kind of got no feedback that it worked because it's off the bottom of the page. So what if we added new ones to the top instead of the bottom? Anybody know how to do that? So we've got to do two things. We need to add it to the beginning of the array and the beginning of the list, right? Anybody happen to know how to do that when we add it to the list on the page, add it to the DOM? So what we're doing right now is this.list append child. Anybody happen to know how to add it to the beginning? Yeah, Caleb?
I use insert before.
Insert before. In a perfect world, if you were designing this API, how would you make it add to the beginning instead of the end? What's the opposite of append? Prepend, right? Yeah, well, they don't know that word, so sorry. There is an experimental prepend method, but it basically isn't supported pretty much anywhere. It isn't supported on mobile at all, so we're not going to use it. So we'll use insert before, which has been there a long time. And it's not nearly as easy to use, sadly. So let's look at DOM insert before. Inserts the specified node before the reference node as a child of the current node. So what do those words mean? Well, when we see the syntax, it'll be clear what that means. So you call insert before on some node. So the parent. In our case, the list, right? The list is the parent. Call insert before. The first argument is the new node, the one we're adding. So list item. And then the reference node is the one you're inserting it before. So, okay, this.list insert before. What are we inserting? The new child is list item. What's the reference child? What are we inserting it before? What's that? Well, that depends on whether we've reordered them. But before the first one, right? So we could go to a lot of trouble and find the first one and grab it off the page. There is, thankfully, at least an easy DOM method for that. Given the parent, which is this.list, you can get its first child through a property called firstChild. Thank you for not making this any harder than it already is. So there's firstChild and first element child, interestingly. What do you think the difference is between firstChild and first element child? What could the difference potentially be? Yeah. FirstChild and first element child. Why differentiate? Can you remind me your name real quick? Can you remind me? Oh, Roy, right. I'm just trying to, every time I talk to somebody, I want to try to let it soak in. Celine, did you have an answer? Yes. So first element child always returns an element. So what would first child do? I mean, if the first child is an element, it'll still return the element. What else could the first child possibly be? What do we have besides elements? In the DOM. Text, right? So the first child might not be an element. It might be text. It might be a text node. So first child will return either one. First element child will find the first one that is actually an element. So in this case, theoretically, the list could have some text before the first li. But if that's the case, I don't know, maybe we would want it after the text but before the first li. So first element child might be more correct here. We're not going to throw any text in there anyway, but first element child or firstChild ought to do what we want. So let's try this. This line's getting just a tad long, so I'm going to do that so we can fit it on the screen a little more easily. Refresh. Let's add the rock. Let's add bad boys. Yay, it added it to the top. So if I add a whole ton of things, I'll always see the one I just typed go right up at the top. Pain and gain. Yay! But what about the array? App.flicks is 0 bad pain and gain? Nope, it's the rock. So our array is backwards. So push adds it to the end. Anybody happen to know how you add something to the beginning of an array? It is like shift, but with 2 other letters in the front of it. Yeah, unshift. It's one of those things that until you have it memorized might be kind of hard to remember. If you actually look at the definition, it might be a little easier. So JS array unshift. So what is shift in the first place? So the shift method removes the first element from an array. Aha. Removes the first element. Unshift adds a new element. So you might kind of think of this as almost being the opposite of push, but what's actually the opposite of push? Pop, right? Add something to the end, remove something from the end. Do the same thing on the front, that would be shift and unshift. So unshift adds to the front of an array. Let's make sure we're not crazy. The rock, bad boys 2, app.flicks, 0 is bad boys 2. They're in sync. Go us. Add flicks to the beginning rather than the end.